I truly believe that there's pros and cons for every single situation in life, and if you can't see the other side, you're just not looking hard enough. I've always tried on my channel to provide an objective view about rabbit care, but one thing that I've been very biased in is rabbits living in pairs, because I still firmly believe that rabbits should be housed in groups. However, I love playing devil's advocate, so today I want to talk about some of the reasons it might actually be better to keep your rabbit alone. Again, I personally do believe that rabbits being in pairs or groups is the absolute best thing for them, but I completely understand that that's not always a possibility, and I think you should be educated on both sides. The first reason is that your rabbits might not bond. If you have one rabbit and you go and get a second rabbit, there's absolutely no guarantee that the two of them will get along. Of course, you can increase your chances by doing bunny dating and picking a rabbit that's already well bonded personality-wise, but it's still not a surefire thing. Especially with baby rabbits, when their personalities haven't fully developed, you might have some that get along really well, and as they grow up, they just fight and their personalities aren't compatible. Same thing goes even for siblings who do have a higher chance of getting along since they were raised together, but people even have rabbits that they've kept together successfully for years, and one day the rabbits decide that they just don't like each other anymore. In the wild, it's completely normal for rabbits to split off and go into different herds, and it's pretty normal for different rabbits to get outcasted or for certain rabbits to not get along. So in captivity, whenever we have two rabbits, we have to be prepared to house them separately. This isn't the worst thing in the world, and some might even argue that housing two rabbits in the room, even if they're not bonded, is far more enriching than just having one. And I do agree with that to an extent, because when you have two rabbits, they're able to see other rabbits and have other rabbit body language and rabbit-to-rabbit communication. However, having two rabbits who aren't bonded can be extremely difficult. For one, there can be a high level of stress when a rabbit sees another rabbit in its territory. So if you do have a rabbit room or a bedroom that you're using for your rabbits, you might have a lot of territorial markings since one rabbit feels like its territory is being threatened. You also are going to constantly have to be monitoring free roam time because you don't want your rabbits getting into each other, and also they can smell each other and it can just be quite stressful overall. The second reason is that not all bonds are created equal. Just because your rabbits bond doesn't mean that they're going to have a strong one. Just like you have friends and there's some friends that you get along with really well and there's others that you can hardly tolerate, it's the same with rabbits. Some bonds can just be very finicky and they need a lot of monitoring and intervention. Also, once your rabbits have bonded, it's possible that they could become unbonded and you'll have to go through the whole bonding process again. This isn't because they've been separated, they can just decide all of a sudden that they don't like each other and you'll have to separate them and reintroduce them. Rabbit bonds are also extremely unstable and they can change drastically if you add another rabbit or even another pet to your home. Even if you have rabbits that are bonded, sometimes some rabbit bonds can actually be stressful for certain rabbits. Not all rabbit personalities are compatible, so some rabbits might be overly dominant and another one might feel stressed because of that. You also might have rabbits that become very food aggressive or just very territorial over the litter box in certain areas, which can cause the other rabbit a lot of stress. Again, I think a lot of these issues can be prevented by picking the right match for your rabbit and going through the bonding process correctly, but the bonding process isn't exactly easy, and that's point number 3. Especially for newer or younger owners, it can be hard to monitor rabbit body language. Rabbit body language is really obvious once you know what to look for, but if you're someone that's new to rabbits, it's extremely subtle, especially when you're comparing it to dogs who vocalize quite a bit. Rabbits, their behavior of them being stressed and them being comfortable looks very similar to the untrained eye. So it's very possible that you might just not do the bonding process correctly. Even if you are doing the bonding process correctly, there's no doubt that it's going to take quite a bit of time and quite a bit of effort. Some bonds are really easy and they require such minimal time and effort, but a lot of bonds are very much an ongoing process, and people have rabbits that they've tried to bond for years and are still unsuccessful. Bonding is also extremely stressful for the rabbits because you're introducing someone who they don't consider to be part of their herd and forcing them to accept. It's nothing like the wild where they grow up with each other and they can choose who to be with. These are more forced associations than they are friendship. You can kind of argue that's what school is. associations, especially if you want to do bunny dating, which I think is the best way to guarantee that you'll get a good match. It's just very stressful for the rabbit. It can actually hurt your bond with your rabbit quite a bit because they might associate you being the one putting them in that situation. Also, it's possible that if you have an older rabbit that they just might not be up for the bonding process because they're just too tired and too old to deal with it. It's just quite a bit of stress and you might not want to do it. Also, with rabbits that have pre-existing health conditions, it's very possible that those conditions could be re-triggered by all the stress. The fourth is that rabbits, for the most part, receive very individualized care. The way that you care for your rabbit is going to be completely different than the way someone else cares for their rabbit. That's because rabbits' personalities are so varied and we all do what works for us. When you add a second rabbit, especially if you're getting one as a baby, you have no idea what that second rabbit's personality is going to be, and it might need completely different care than what you're providing your first one. For example, when I just had Sachin, he was absolutely amazing with litter box training and he was really good with my dog and he wasn't skittish at all. So I was able to let him free roam in the main living room area for multiple hours. However, with my second rabbit, Butchin, he's a lot more shy and timid, so he doesn't like being in the kitchen living room area just because there's a lot of commotion going on, and after a couple hours, you can tell that he's over it and wants to go back to the cage. Even things like diet, cleaning schedule, and housing all might have to be changed due to your second rabbit. Maybe your first rabbit does really well in an X-pen setup for multiple hours of the day and you just let them free roam for a couple hours in the evening, but your second rabbit might be extremely active or a big escape artist and you might have to consider a new setup. The fifth thing that's really hard about having a group of rabbits or even just a bonded pair is monitoring health and food. Rabbits are prey animals and they're going to want to hide their illness. In the wild, if they start becoming sick and showing their illness, they're going to be picked off. So in captivity, they hide it for as long as they can, and usually by the time you notice something is wrong, it's often too late. It's a lot easier to notice changes in an individual rabbit, partly because your attention isn't split, but also because it's a lot easier to monitor their food. When you have rabbits in pairs, you don't really know who is eating, unless you're specifically watching them, and even then, it can be quite deceiving. You also can't tell if a rabbit, for example, stops grooming themselves because the other rabbit will likely take over. And if your rabbit's personality changes, it might be hard to know whether that's because of the new recent bond or because there's something wrong illness-wise. Along with health, it's pretty likely that if one rabbit is sick, your other rabbit is sick as well. Because bonded rabbits spend pretty much 24/7 together, it's likely that if one got an illness, it's passed it on to the other, so that will be double the vet costs and double the cost of medication. That brings us on to the next one, which is cost. A lot of people assume having 2 rabbits is double the cost of having 1 rabbit, but a lot of things like toys and the housing can be shared, and there's a lot of things you can probably save money on, like toys and enrichment, since they have each other. However, when it comes to food and when it comes to vet bills, it is going to be double the cost. That kind of goes into space. A lot of people argue that bonded rabbits don't need double of space as individual rabbits since they do spend the majority of time together. However, I would really say that if you have a bonded pair of rabbits, you should be providing them at least 16 square feet. Even though they do enjoy spending time together, it's important that they have space to get away from each other, and especially if you have rabbits who don't have a super stable bond, it's important that you're giving your rabbits enough space for them to get away from each other. No matter how much space you give them, they're always going to have more space in the wild, so you still do technically run the risk of something going wrong. However, if something goes wrong in a small cage, it's likely going to be a lot worse than it does in a big cage. So especially when you have newly bonded rabbits or rabbits who just don't have a very stable bond, you're going to want to definitely increase your area for how much you're giving them, because if they do get into a fight or one rabbit decides to become aggressive or territorial, you do want to give the other rabbit a way to escape, or else you're just going to be a bloodbath. And this last one, I did want to throw it in there, but this is one that I wouldn't actually agree with, and that's that your rabbits' personalities can change. When you have a single rabbit, they're very needy because they need a bonded companion. So they're looking for you to be their 24/7 companion, and they're constantly looking at you for attention, pets, and grooming and cuddling. But as soon as you have a second rabbit, you're going to start seeing a lot more natural rabbit behaviors, and they're going to stop obsessing over you. A lot of people have told me specifically this is why they don't want a bonded pair, because they like how needy their rabbit is. But I think that's a little bit cruel, because when you think about it from the rabbit's perspective, can you imagine wanting someone to be there with you 24/7 and having your world revolve around someone, but they just can't give you what they need? Also, even if you could be with a rabbit 24/7, you're really not a substitute for another rabbit. For example, you can never flop next to them the way these guys can. You can never communicate with them, you can never groom them, and everything like that. So I don't think just because you enjoy having a needy rabbit is a good reason to keep them alone. However, I do think it's important to note that your rabbit's personality can change towards you, especially during the bonding process, since they are associating you with that stress and the pain and the tension of being bonded. They're not going to look at you differently as soon as the bonding process is over and think, oh wow, she put me through this, so now I have a best friend. They're still probably going to be a little bit frustrated with you, and it's going to take a while for you to improve that bond. For me personally, my bond with Sachin didn't change very much. I think he was a little bit upset during the bonding process, but he wasn't too hurt since he was the one being pretty dominant. So he didn't mind it, and it didn't take long for us to recover. But my second rabbit, Bachin, who's always been pretty shy and been pretty timid, and the bonding process was a lot more stressful on him since Sachin wanted to be the alpha. He doesn't love me very much. I think a lot of that just is his personality in general, with him being very timid and him already having a bonded companion. But I do remember when I first getting him, for him to be a lot more outgoing, and since I had to do the bonding process, he became a little bit more skittish of me, because every time I would get him out, it was usually to put him in a pen with Sachin. So all of that did hurt our bond a little bit, but I think those are obstacles that you could easily overcome. So those are the reasons why it might be better for you to have a single rabbit than a bonded pair. Again, I have so many videos on why it's better to have rabbits in bonded pairs, and I still do believe that. However, I do realize that every situation is completely individualized, and maybe for your rabbit and your lifestyle, it just works better for you to have them as a single bunny. Also, if my videos have persuaded you into getting your rabbit a buddy, which a lot of you have told me, and that's genuinely one of the most exciting things, and it always makes my day, just make sure you're prepared for all of these things. I don't want anyone to see a video of bonded rabbits on the internet and think that's what their rabbits are going to be like, because like I said before, bonds can be very unstable and there's a lot to consider. Whenever you have your rabbits in bonded pairs, there's always some level of danger, because rabbits, as sweet as they are, can also be weapons. So every time, as cute as they look now, they are technically a small danger to each other. So all those things are important to understand. I'd hate for someone to buy a second rabbit after watching one of my videos, and have their first rabbit either get hurt or just have the bonding process not work out and have any of these things happen. So yeah, just make sure that you're educated and make informed decisions. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. See you next time. Bye!